Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivraj Gacharya Stoktarastasi Srimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru Gauranga. So tonight I'm going to speak something that I read in, that's on my mind. I read a lot. So recently I've been reading Priti Sandarbha. So just a short introduction of what that's about. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, is the incarnation of Lord Krishna. He appeared 500 years ago. And he had 6 prominent disciples whom he instructed. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself only wrote 8 verses. He didn't write. He taught his disciples. And there are especially 6 prominent writers among those disciples and grand disciples, called the 6 Goswamis. So one of them is named Jiva Goswami. And Jiva Goswami was a great theologian, philosopher, who elaborated on the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he wrote, especially he's well known for writing 6 treatises called the 6 Sandarbhas, or Shat Sandarbha. And the last of those 6 Sandarbhas is about prema, or love of Godhead, specifically. He covers a lot of philosophical topics in his earlier Sandarbhas. And there's a gradual progression up to very exquisite detail about what exactly is prema, or love of God. Priti is a synonym for prema. It means love. So in Krishna consciousness, we're interested in love ultimately. People talk about love, but we make a whole science of it. And of course, our idea of love is transcendental love. Love between the soul and God. That's really what love is all about. So that's what Jiva Goswami wrote about in his last Sandarbha, Priti Sandarbha. Now, of course, it's a whole development. It's quite a long book, actually. And he goes through different philosophical points in the beginning, explaining just the idea of prema. What is prema exactly, or priti? What is love of God? And one of the things he explains is that, how do we know? Prabhupada would sometimes make the point that you have to learn about Krishna, and our goal is to love Krishna. So we begin by learning about him. Of course, we learn his instructions by him in Bhagavad Gita, and we learn about him in so much of the other literature, Vedic literature, especially the Puranas and especially Srimad Bhagavatam. And when you learn about something or someone, the way we learn is through the qualities of that thing or that person. So if we want to know about Krishna, we want to know what his qualities are. And of course, the first thing we learn about Krishna is that his qualities are attractive. They're extremely attractive. In fact, everything that we're attracted to in this world is really a reflection of Krishna's qualities. It's coming from Krishna. We think we love this, or we love that, or we're attracted to this or that, and we have an an idea in our mind that, or maybe we don't think about it at all, that this had no connection with God or any connection with Krishna. Is just that thing itself or its qualities. But the qualities ultimately they come from Krishna. Whatever is beautiful, whatever is amazing, whatever attracts us in any way, ultimately that's coming from Krishna. So we want to learn about these things. So Jiva Goswami in his Priti Sandarbha, he talks about Krishna's qualities in a number of different ways. Now I'm going to read a little something here. There's each one of his sections of his book is called an anucheda, which just means a section, you can say. So this is from section 118. There's 350 something, or something in that range, I think, between 300 and 400. I forget the exact number of these anuchedas. So this is from text number 18. I'm just going to read this sentence to get us started here. He says, Jiva Goswami says, because of the greatness of devotees, the Lord melts with prema. So again, prema means, or priti means love, and is controlled by the devotees. These two qualities cover all else. So these are considered the greatest of Krishna's qualities. That, first of all, of course, this is a glorification of the devotees. The devotees of Krishna are so great, their hearts are so pure, and their love for Krishna is so full and so intense that it transforms Krishna. You can actually move God. You might think of God as the immovable force that moves everything else, but we can actually move God by love. And Krishna is so responsive to that love, it actually controls him. So control is one of the two things that I mentioned here. The first one is that it melts his heart. Really, you might say against his will. Of course, he doesn't will against it, but he doesn't exactly, make it happen. He responds automatically. He can't help himself. Again, so his heart melts. And so the second one here is that he's controlled by the devotees' love. His heart melts in response to their love, and he's controlled. They actually control him. You can control God. Prabhupada would sometimes talk about this point. He said the impersonalists, they want to become God. They think, so many, as we say, bogus gurus, they come and teach that actually you're God. We're all God. And Prabhupada said, actually our aspiration is higher. We want to control God. We want to be greater than God, actually. And you can, through love. Love can do anything. So in this, to illustrate this, Jiva Goswami gives some different examples, different verses from the scripture to illustrate some of these qualities of Krishna. So the first one, the example is Prithu Maharaj. He's talking about the exchange between Prithu Maharaj and Krishna in his form as Lord Vishnu. Of course, Krishna is his original form, the most attractive form of Krishna. And Krishna also has unlimited expansions and avatars. And Lord Vishnu is an opulent form of Krishna, four-armed form of Krishna, extraordinary form. And much of what we read in the Srimad Bhagavatam has to do with Lord Vishnu, actually, and his interactions with the great devotees on planet Earth or on other parts of the universe. Within this material world, we hear about Lord Vishnu, who exists eternally in the spiritual world, but when the material world is manifest, he also comes into this world in different forms. So King Prithu is actually a great king, spoken about in the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam, and he was specifically empowered by Krishna to rule this world. He has what is called the Palana Shakti. Palana also means to protect, like Krishna's Gopal, protector of the cows. So this King Prithu, he's empowered to rule and protect the world and its citizens. But in his role, he's also a devotee of the Lord. He's a devotee of Lord Vishnu, so he exhibits the qualities, the love for the Lord and different ecstatic emotions in relationship to the Lord, and so on. So there's quite a few chapters about King Prithu Maharaj, his life and teachings in the 4th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So there's one interaction where King Prithu performs a great sacrifice, and Lord Vishnu actually descends and comes personally to take part in that sacrifice, to receive the offerings and so on. So, of course, King Prithu, he's overwhelmed. He's getting the darshan, he's getting the audience of Lord Vishnu himself. So first we hear something about the emotion of the devotee. This is how King Prithu responds. It says here, Prithu offered all items to the Supreme Lord, the soul of the universe, and grasped his lotus feet with ever-increasing bhakti. The Lord with lotus eyes, friend of the devotees, seeing Prithu, was delayed by his feelings of mercy as he was about to leave and did not depart. So this is an example of the Lord responding to the love of his devotee. He had finished what he wanted to do there, visiting that sacrifice, and he was about to leave, but when he saw the ecstatic love of Prithu Maharaj, he couldn't leave. He was held back, but because of the devotion of this great devotee. So King Prithu, he's representing a great king, but he's showing this, even though he's a great king, he was so powerful, extremely powerful, and he had great influence all over the world, but he became very humble and moved by the darshan of Lord Vishnu. It says, the first king, he's called the first king, with folded hands, tears in his eyes, could not see the Lord, because his voice was choked, he could not speak. So he had this much emotion in seeing the Lord. Tears completely covered his eyes and he couldn't speak. So this is one example of this exchange between the Lord and his devotees. This is actually the sweetest part of the whole, science of Krishna consciousness, the exchange between the Lord and his devotees. Actually, sometimes Prabhupada would condense everything, the absolute truth, you can say. What is reality? Reality, when you boil it down, is Bhakta, Bhakti, and Bhagavan. It means God, the devotee, and the exchange between them. That's what's real. That's what's important. Of course, that's our aim. We want to enter into that circle of those three things. We want to have the bhakti, become bhaktas, and interact with Bhagavan, the Lord. So we see an example of this here. Now, as Jiva Goswami does, of course, he tends to progress very, step by step and make different categories of things. So he's explaining here now how how the Lord's heart melts in relationship to devotees in different rasas. I think most of you are familiar with this term. We call it rasa. Technically it's called sthayi bhava. It means the attitude toward the Lord, the transcendental love, the particular nature of the devotee's love for the Lord. So one can love him in a kind of a neutral way. You can say just adoration, awe, or you can serve him as a servant, be a friend or a parent in that kind of relationship, or an actual lover. So he goes through these and he gives different examples of them. So here's one. This is about dasya bhava, which is a servant. So he quotes here, tears from the eyes of the Lord, overcome with compassion for the surrendered soul Kardama, fell in that lake. Because the lake was mixed with the tears of the Lord, it was called Bindu Sarovara. So I have to explain this a little bit. Kardama Muni, he's one of the original creators of this universe. Lord Brahma is the head creator, and then he has subordinates called Prajapatis, sons and grandsons and other descendants. And their mission given to them by the Lord is to fill the world with population. So what we find often in the Srimad Bhagavatam is whenever any devotee has some mission like this, they perform great penances to purify themselves. They feel they're given this great task by the Lord, and they want to make sure they do it right. So they purify their hearts by performing austerities generally. Of course, in former times, they would meditate for thousands of years sometimes. So Kardama Muni did this. So it takes great self-control. It's great austerity and penance to do this kind of thing for a long, long time. So Kardama Muni did that, and he attracted the attention of the Lord, and the Lord appeared there. And when the Lord appeared, Lord Vishnu, he's actually called Shukla. Shukla means whitish. So this particular form of the Lord, he was so moved by seeing the austerity of Kardama Muni and fulfilling his wish to carry out the Lord's desire that the Lord cried, and his tears fell. He was on the shoulders of Garuda flying in. Lord Vishnu flies through Garuda Airways. And there is a lake there, Bindu Sarovara, where Kardama Muni was performing his penance, and the tears from his eyes mixed with that lake. Therefore, it's called Bindu Sarovara. Bindu means tears, so it's mixed with his tears. So he made Krishna cry, made Lord Vishnu cry. And his relationship with the Lord was in dasya, as a servant. He was, serving the Lord by doing his service as a Prajapati. Now, Jiva Goswami talks about the next one is. Now, one thing that's interesting here, those of you who know, of course, Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, we generally think first we have servitude, and then friendship, and then parental affection, then conjugal love. But Jiva Goswami sometimes turns them around. He sometimes puts vatsalya, or parental affection, and then sukhya. This is what he's doing here. He's putting the cowherd relationship, the cowherd friends, the friendship with Krishna, above parenthood. Now, there are hints here and there why he does that. And one reason it implied or suggested that he does this is because Srimati Radharani and the other gopis who are on the highest level, they're thinking, oh, if I could only be a cowherd boy, I could be with Krishna all day long. So from Radharani's point of view, she's thinking it's higher to be a cowherd boy with Krishna. She's in some ways, you might say, jealous of Krishna's cowherd friends. So in any case, so here now, to talk about an exchange, this is in Vatsalya, or parental. So this is a verse here. This is from the 10th canto. Krishna and Balaram embraced their parents and bowed down to them, but their throats were so choked with tears of love that the lords could say nothing. So this scene takes place at Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra, of course, is where Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita. This happened later. Before that, while Krishna and Balaram were living in Dwarka, Krishna's opulent city on the west coast of India, or off the west coast of India, and there was a great ceremony to take place, observance at a solar eclipse at Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra is sort of in the Delhi area, in that part, North India. So Krishna and Balaram traveled there, and of course they had been away from their parents for a very long time. And when they saw them, they just started crying. They're grown men, of course, but their throats were choked up. Now, the one thing I want to mention right now, I was going to talk about it later, but when the Lord shows these emotions, especially we think about this in the Vrindavan Leelas, Krishna as a child, it's not that he's just faking it. He's just playing. He's actually experiencing these things. He's God himself, but he's crying. He's afraid. He's actually afraid. He's a little boy because he takes on the role. And it's not just, again, it's not that he's playing. He actually experiences these emotions. Why? Because he wants to. That's why. He can do anything he wants. And one reason he can do anything he wants is because he has innumerable energies or potencies who are all personified, who take care of everything for him. If we want to do something, it doesn't necessarily happen because, well, we're limited in our abilities and our potential and our access to maybe everything we need to accomplish something. But Krishna just wills it. Satya Sankalpa means his wish is actual fact. Whatever he desires, it happens. So if he wants to be a little baby and actually experience what it's like to be a baby or a little boy and do all kinds of mischief and be afraid of his mother. One piece of evidence, he can do that because Leela Shakti takes care of it. In other words, he can lose himself in that role. And Leela Shakti, sort of the director, you might say, of this whole Leela, pastimes of the Lord. She makes sure everything happens just as he wants to. Now, one argument that Jiva Goswami says to support this idea that Krishna actually experiences fear. Now, one reason this point comes up earlier in the Bhagavatam in the first canto is that Kunti Devi, when she's offering her prayers to Lord Krishna, Krishna is about to leave where she is in Hastinapur and go back to Dwarka after the battle of Kurukshetra. And she offers prayers to Krishna, first canto, 8th chapter. And one of the things she says, I'm really bewildered because fear personified is afraid of you, but you're afraid of your mother because she's chasing you with a stick. Now, we might think, well, Krishna's just playing, he's just pretending that he's afraid. But Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, I think, also makes this point, that Kunti Devi wouldn't be bewildered if she could explain it like that. Oh, Krishna's just pretending. That wouldn't bewilder her. She's bewildered because he's God, but he's actually afraid. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary, here or maybe in another place where a similar idea comes up, he says, don't think you have it figured out. Krishna is inconceivable. He can perform paradoxical things. He can act paradoxically. There's a name for Krishna which I can't think of right now, which says that he settles all contradictions. They all become settled in Krishna. So some things it may seem contradictory to us, but because he's God, he can do these things. So here's another very touching scene. Krishna Balaram grown. You may, if you read about these things, it may, it's striking that we hear that they sit on their parents' lap. They're grown men, and they're sitting on their parents' lap and crying and so on. So this is an example of this, how Krishna's heart is so touched by his devotees' love. That's what it's all about. They're responding to their love. Nanda and Yashoda, especially in Vrindavan, their love for Krishna is so intense. When Krishna left Vrindavan and went to Mathura, well, they were just inconsolable, especially Mother Yashoda. When Uddhava went there to deliver a message from Krishna in Mathura, then Mother Yashoda, she didn't really hear anything. She was just crying. She wouldn't even open her eyes because she didn't want to see anything. She couldn't see Krishna. She didn't want to see anything. So her love is just so intense. And of course, Krishna responds to that. He has a very soft heart, and he responds. So the next one here is something about the cowherd boys. No, this is not. Well, this is friendship, but this is not about the cowherd boys. This is about Sudama, Krishna's Gurukul friend. It says, at that time, Achyuta, Krishna, was seated on his consort's bed. Spotting the Brahmana at some distance, the Lord immediately stood up, went forward to meet him, and with great pleasure embraced him. The lotus-eyed Supreme Lord felt intense ecstasy upon touching the body of his dear friend, the wise Brahmana, and thus he shed tears of love. So this, of course, this Sudama Vipra, Krishna, Krishna was in the Gurukul for only a couple of months, because he learned everything in 64 days. He didn't have to stick around for years. He was a brahmachari for 2 months. He went back to his old ways. So anyway, Krishna spent time in the Gurukul, and this was one of his Gurukul buddies, his class friend. And of course, they experienced something really traumatic together. You can say they went out to collect wood, and there was this huge, hurricane came during the night, heavy rains and cold, and they were shivering and holding on to each other. And of course, Krishna reminisces about this when Sudama arrives. So one thing, when you go through hardships together, it tends to bind you together. You form great friendships, just like they have war buddies, the people who fought together in the war because they went through such intense things. So Krishna had this really heart connection with this boy from his childhood that they went experienced this heavy thing together. So when he saw him again, of course, the backstory is this Brahmana was poor, and his wife said, well, maybe if you go see your rich friend Krishna, maybe he can help us out. They were both emaciated, didn't even have enough money to buy food. So he was reluctant, but he didn't want to ask Krishna for anything, but he said, well, at least I can see Krishna, that'll be really nice. So this is how Krishna responded. As soon as he saw him, Krishna was sitting in it. One thing that's interesting is that he was allowed to just go in. You have to go through different gates to get into this city. Of course, has soldiers at the gates and so on. But the Brahmanas usually were allowed to just come and go. So he walked, right in and into Krishna's home, or was led into Krishna's home. And Krishna was sitting on Rukmini's bed. She was fanning him. And Krishna just jumped up and ran to him as soon as he saw him. And we see here, he hugged him and was crying to see his old friend. Whoop. Paper airplane. So the next one, of course, now we have the gopis. They're conjugal, as Prabhupada calls it, amorous. I prefer the word amorous. Conjugal is actually supposed to be about married life, but anyway. But their amorous relationship with young Krishna's amorous relationship, romantic relationship with the young gopis of Vrindavan. So here's something. This Jiva Goswami uses the word kanta bhava. Kanta means lover. So the bhava, or the feeling, the ecstasy of a lover. How does that affect Krishna? Of course, it affects him more than any of the others. It's the highest, it's the most intense. The gopis experience also themselves ecstasies that the others, that are exclusively available to them. So here it says, seeing that the gopis were fatigued from enjoyment, merciful Krishna lovingly wiped their faces with his comforting hand. So this doesn't seem so major, but they were dancing together, and Krishna saw, oh, you're tired now. So let me do something about that. Let me relieve your fatigue. So the Lord became merciful out of prema for the gopis. Now this is also, this I wanted to point out, we tend to think of prema as our response, our attitude toward Krishna. We love Krishna. We want to experience that prema, that giving of our hearts to Krishna, that's called prema. But Krishna also has prema. It's both ways. The Prabhupada would explain, what love is an exchange between two. So whether you're on the giving end or the receiving end, of course it goes both ways. But you both experience that same ecstasy. So Krishna, that's what this is about. Krishna's heart. Krishna is experiencing prema himself. Of course, we know Lord Chaitanya wanted to experience the highest prema. He wanted to experience Radharani's prema, because Krishna, even though he experiences prema, he thinks my devotees experience more than I do. They're getting more intense bhava or ecstasy. And also Krishna, he feels himself, now we're hearing here how he's responding, but he also feels inadequate. He feels that he can't respond adequately to the love of his devotees. The devotees, he feels, my devotees give everything to me. That's what he says about the gopis, of course. They gave up everything. We read about it, it's quite shocking, actually, what they gave up. They just left their children, they left their husbands, they left their homes. They didn't care what the consequences were. They just loved Krishna so intensely. Now, Krishna gives an explanation of this in different places. One thing he says, the reason I can't reciprocate is because there's only one of me. So they're all focused on me, but there's so many of them. So I have to reciprocate with all of them, an infinite number of them. But they can focus all of theirs in one place. Of course, Krishna can do, we know, he's not limited in that way. But he has this emotion, he has this feeling that I can never respond to the gopis. Of course, he tells them you have to be satisfied with just your own good qualities. You're such amazing, wonderful devotees. Just be satisfied with that. So now, let's see, is this where it goes on? Now, all of that was just about, I mentioned in the beginning how there were two qualities. Krishna's heart melts in response to his devotees. And the second quality is that he's controlled by his devotees. So now, I probably won't have time to go through all of these, so many stories involved here. But this is the second, now Jiva Goswami goes on to this. He does a similar kind of thing for how Krishna is controlled by his devotees' love. So let me just dive into it here and see a little something. So here's one story. This is an example of Krishna being controlled. If you know the story of Vamanadeva, of course, from the Bhagavatam, the incarnation of the Lord, and it's a long pastime, but at the end of it, what happened was this Bali Maharaj was given a planet in the, it's kind of like a heavenly planet, but it's a lower. The opulence there is heavenly, but it's considered to be a hellish planet because it's below. It's one of the lower planets. But in any case, Bali Maharaj is there, and Vamanadev, Lord Vishnu, is his gatekeeper. In other words, he decides who comes in and who doesn't come in. So here's this is in connection with that. It says, the Lord himself, Guru of the universe, Narayana, merciful to his devotee, stands at Bali's door with a club. The Lord kicked Ravana, this is from the 5th canto. The Lord kicked Ravana 10,000 yojanas with his big toe when Ravana came there to conquer Bali. So this is just an example of he's being controlled. There's another story that Durvasa Muni, this is in one commentary in the Bhagavatamrita, Durvasa Muni and other sages were being harassed in Dwarka. This apparently is Dwarka. Dwarka is always a holy place, so this is before Krishna's time, earlier. So they were being harassed there by demons, Rakshasas. So they wanted Lord Vishnu to come and protect them. So Durvasa Muni went down to Sutala, where this Bali Maharaj is, and Lord Vamanadev. So he went to the gate and he said, he asked Bali Maharaj, he said, I want to go see Lord Vishnu because I want to ask him to come. I mean, he asked Vamanadev, I'm sure. He asked Vamanadev, I want you to come and come to Dwarka and take care of these demons to protect us. So Vamanadev said, well, I have to ask Bali Maharaj. That he was actually playing that, doing that. He said, I've told him I was going to protect him, so I'll have to ask Bali Maharaj if I can go. So he asked Bali Maharaj, or Durvasa Muni asked Bali Maharaj, and Bali Maharaj said, no, you can't have him. And Durvasa Muni, I think he threatened to commit suicide, and Bali Maharaj said, whatever, he's staying here. So Lord Vamanadev didn't leave because he was being controlled by the love, the surrender, in this case, you might say, of Bali Maharaj. So that's what that one's about. That's also in Dasya. He starts off, he goes through the different rasas. So this is about someone in Dasya, the servitude. And then he talks about someone in Vatsalya, the elder gopis. Elder, that means adult gopis. Not that they're old and they're sick or anything. The elder means they're older. They're not the young gopis that Krishna's girlfriends. So it says, praised by the elder gopis, the Lord, like a puppet on strings, sometimes danced like other boys. Sometimes he sang and sometimes acted ignorantly. So this is Krishna when he's really small and he's still under his parents' care and he's always home and playing around in the courtyard and so on. And all the neighboring ladies are coming around and seeing Krishna and reporting his mischief, things that Krishna does. One thing that's interesting, it never really dawned on me, but so one of the acharyas pointed this out. He said, God even urinates, he said. Because in this pastime of Krishna as a little boy, it says that's one thing he would do sometimes. He would pinch the babies and make them cry, and he would urinate on the floor. You think, what? God is urinating. So if he wants to, he can also urinate. So this is another amazing things that he does. So why does he do these things? Of course, he's actually under the control of his mother. His mother says dance, so he dances. Parents have their little children do little things. So, and it says, and sometimes acted ignorantly. So he's God, he knows everything. But he acts like a little boy who doesn't know anything, just learning, and has to learn from his parents. So let me just go. So then the next one is friendship. This has to do with Arjuna. Hearing through their praises that Krishna acted as charioteer. Let's see who's speaking here. This is about the Pandavas and Krishna anyway. Krishna acted as a charioteer, follower, servant, friend, and messenger of the dear Pandavas. And Vishnu was respected by the whole world. Let's see. This is Yudhishthira Maharaj. He expected devotion to the lotus feet of the Lord. So he's just bringing up the point how Krishna was so controlled by the Pandavas. He did all kinds of things for them. He was their friend. So when you have a friendship with someone, well, you feel obliged to do things, to do nice things for them. Otherwise, what kind of friend are you? If they need something, then you do it. So Krishna did that kind of thing with his friends. So with the Pandavas especially, he spent a lot of time with them. And he lived with them, spent, sometimes months with them at a time. And they would ask him to do things. Even he would act. Somewhere it says that he, is there a verse here? Let me see. Oh, here. Oh, no. Okay. I thought somewhere it says here that he spent all night standing outside as a guard at their door. So sometimes Krishna even acted as a guard for them. So then, let's see. So that was a friendship. So that we'll basically end here. But so here's another one with the gopis. So this is what Krishna said, which I basically paraphrased. But this is during the Rasa Leela, where Krishna said, "I am not able to repay my debt to you, my debt for your spotless service, even within the lifetime of Brahma. Your connection with me is beyond reproach. You have worshipped me, cutting off all domestic ties, which are difficult to break. Therefore, please let your own glorious deeds be your compensation." So now, I'll just let you know, but what he does now, the next part of this Priti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami, he's in the context of these things, how he's controlled by his devotees, he actually breaks religious principles. Now Krishna, one of his names is Satya, which means, for example, this is one of the examples, he's truth personified. There's a verse, the prayers by the demigods to Lord Krishna in the womb. It has about half a dozen different usages of the word Satya, how Krishna is truth itself. He's the supreme truth. Satyam Param Dhimahi, of course. So truthfulness, and he's Dharma. Dharma means, of course, religiousness, following the religious codes, following the Vedas. So especially when he was in Dwarka, he showed this very clearly. He always did things dharmically. But in response to the love of his devotees, he sometimes breaks those rules. He tells lies. He breaks his promise because of his devotees. I'll just mention this one thing and then I'll stop. So the very famous one is Bhishma Dev, while he's lying on the bed of arrows about to pass away, and he's having darshan of Krishna, and he's reminiscing, he's glorifying Krishna. So one thing that Krishna promised was that he wouldn't fight in the battle of Kurukshetra. He gave Duryodhana and Arjuna choices, one of you can have my army and one of you can have me, but I won't fight. So Arjuna, he was given a first choice and he chose Krishna. And Duryodhana was happy because he wanted the army anyway. But Arjuna just wanted Krishna. So Krishna had promised, I'm not going to fight. But I can't get into all the details. But what happened was Arjuna was about to be killed by grandfather Bhishma Dev on the battlefield. Bhishma Dev was the greatest warrior, and he was about to kill Arjuna. Arjuna was really in danger. So Krishna he became extremely angry, and he took a wheel of a chariot and he rushed after Bhishma Dev, and he was ready to kill him. So he wasn't supposed to fight. But the reason that Krishna did this, and there's a verse that explains this in the first canto, Nigamamapahayam apatigyam. He says, in order to uphold my promise, because Bhishma had Duryodhana the night before had said, you're not fighting hard enough because you have some sympathy towards the Pandavas. So Bhishma Dev said, you'll see, I'll fight so hard tomorrow that either I'm going to kill Arjuna or Krishna's going to have to fight. So that's what happened, actually. So Krishna had promised not to fight, and Bhishma Dev had made this promise, but so Krishna wanted to uphold Bhishma Dev's promise to uphold Bhishma Dev's promise or vow, he broke his own promise. And I was just reading this, actually. I mentioned this recently in a class, too. We usually think of lying as that you just lie to someone straight out. You tell some lie. But one of the acharyas said the biggest lie is to break a vow. So it's like after. You made a vow, and then you break the vow. That's the biggest lie. So Krishna did that. He broke his vow because he was responding to the love of his devotee. He wanted to glorify Bhishma Dev, actually. So anyway, this is the next section that in this Priti Sandarbha, where Jiva Goswami talks about how Krishna, there's a whole list of, I think it's 20, I forget how many it is, 29 qualities, it might be in the first canto by Bhumi Devi, Mother Earth, where she lists all these qualities of Krishna. So Jiva Goswami starts going through these qualities one by one and showing how Krishna, he doesn't go through all of them, but he goes through a number of them, showing how Krishna sometimes transgresses Dharma, even though he's Dharma Raj, the original Lord of Dharma, but he does it to please his devotee. Again, just as we want to please Krishna, Prabhupada would sometimes say, being a devotee of Krishna means always thinking, how can I please Krishna? That's the short definition of what it means to be a devotee. Not how can I please myself, how can I please Krishna? And Krishna is always thinking, how can I please my devotees? And because he's God, he can do everything better than us. We want to be the servant of him, but he's a better servant of us than we can ever be the servant of him. And of course, that whole reciprocation is so sweet, and there's so much information about that in our books. So just a final point is that we see what a well-rounded and deep and broad understanding of God we get from our books and from our acharyas, our teachers who have presented these things to us. And of course, we're all indebted to Srila Prabhupada for delivering this knowledge to us. All right, I'll stop here. Anyone would like to add or any question? Yes, Prabhu?
Thank you, Prabhu, for
Is something with the switch, maybe? Turn it off and turn it on.
Can you hear me now?
Thank you, Prabhu, for a nice class. Thank you, Prabhu. My question is there anything we can do? Is there anything we can do to love for Guru?
Is there anything we can do to have that love for Krishna? Yeah, everything. Our whole lives, Prabhupada has given us everything. We have to live our lives as Krishna conscious as we possibly can. That's it. We have to live Krishna conscious lives. Of course, we're all trying in different ways. We have to. Of course, one of the main things. Of course, we chant Hare Krishna. That's our basic practice, and all the other practices of devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada would always point out, without offenses. And we have to chant without offense. Then it will be effective. So our whole life is, we're in school, you might say. We're trying to get a diploma. We're trying to graduate, to go to Goloka Vrindavan, to go to Krishna, to qualify ourselves. In one sense, we can never be qualified, but our quality, of course, is our love for Krishna. So we developed that by all the things Prabhupada gave us. He would say so many times, I've given you everything. Just, there's nothing missing. Just follow what I've done. Do the routine work, he used to say. Of course, you can call that their bhajan or sadhana. Of course, it's very important to have daily practices in Krishna consciousness. Sankhya purvaka namagana natibi. Prabhupada would point to the Goswamis as exemplars of this. They chanted a certain number of rounds. They bowed down a certain number of times a day. They tended to count things. So at Prabhupada, of course, he initiated disciples must chant 16 rounds a day, carefully avoiding the offenses. So wherever we are in our progression in Krishna consciousness, We have to have daily, regulated practice, not that we just do it when we feel like it. In fact, in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, as if in military discipline, you have to do. So that's important. And then we must have faith that it will work. This is a process given to us. It's coming down from Krishna, ultimately, through the parampara. There's great potency there. And we have the encouragement, and we can even say guarantee from these great souls that if you do these things, you will get results. We have examples in our scriptures, and we have examples of, actually even in our own lifetimes, at least in my lifetime, we're seeing examples of devotees leaving this world at very, very auspicious circumstances. If they're not going back to Godhead, they've made a lot of progress in that direction. So we can see that Krishna consciousness works. So that's, we try to do it the best as we can and feel some security that we are going to progress as time goes on.
We have been doing a lot of sadhana bhakti here in ISKCON. Anybody has ever love for Krishna?
Well, we don't know.
On the
How
other
do we
hand,
know? We don't really know anyone's heart. Prabhupada appreciated. One thing is, you get the blessings of the Acharya. I've been reading Prabhupada Leela a lot lately, and I see how Prabhupada was so appreciative, grateful of the contributions of his disciples. So, of course, we say we're talking about pleasing Krishna, but we have to please the Acharya. We have to do something for his mission. That's how you please him, actually. You contribute to his mission. And, of course, Prabhupada wanted us to cooperate together and push on. And Prabhupada was such an empowered preacher. He was talking about Prithu Maharaj as empowered, Shaktyavesh. So Srila Prabhupada was certainly empowered as a preacher. One thing, when you read his leelas, his pastimes, his life, you see he never stopped preaching. He couldn't, really. It was like he couldn't. It just came out. It just poured out of him. Even when he was sick and devotees would try to keep him down, but he would just start talking, and he would, in the middle of the night, he'd call in a servant and start preach to him for 2 hours, and always preaching, And he always, even from the very beginning, I just started doing this. I went all the way back to the earliest lectures of Prabhupada, and I'm working my way through them chronologically. So right from the very beginning, of course, Prabhupada named his society the International Society for Krishna Consciousness when he had one temple with a few devotees. But always right from the beginning, he would talk about his disciples going all over the world and opening temples and preaching Krishna consciousness, and that was his mission. So that's also, of course, that we want to, advance in Krishna consciousness. We do that by contributing to the mission, thinking about, how we can please Srila Prabhupada in that way. So there's potency in doing that. So a lot of devotees have dedicated their lives to Srila Prabhupada, and naturally, he's going to reciprocate. And he also would say that, he would pray for the blessings of his Guru Maharaj. My Guru Maharaj wanted this done. I'm just following his order. He will shower his blessings upon you, he would say. He would tell his disciples, the grandfather can give more blessings than the father even. So you will please him. If you try to please me, you will please him, and he will shower his blessings on. And of course, this goes all the way up the line in the parampara. They all will shower their blessings. So we have to have some faith that this will happen. Sometimes, of course, it's a challenge, where we have so many anarthas, things going against us, our, bad habits and so on from lifetime. So it's difficult, but we have to keep doing it. Cheto darpanamarjanam. Eventually we'll become clean. Our hearts will become clean. Yes.
You said to get Krishna prem, you said we need to learn about Hare Krishna. So to learn to get the Krishna prem, we need to learn more about the qualities of Krishna and understand his glorifications and his the special qualities of Krishna.
Yeah. Actually, you just read any of Prabhupada's books and you'll get all the information. Maybe not, systematically, first I have to study Krishna's qualities and then something else and then something else. You learn all of these things. They all come together by reading Srila Prabhupada's purports. He gives so much information. I mean, he would sometimes say, you just read this one book. And he said that about different books. You just read this one book and you will become Krishna conscious. So the information is there. It's presented in different ways. So we may not have such a structured course. Of course, you can do that, especially, certain people are more academically inclined, you might say, and they like to approach things in that way. But whether you do that or not, Prabhupada would just say, just open a book. Whenever you have any free time, just open a book and read it. He said, anywhere you read, it's sweet, and because it's all Krishna. So the other thing is, it's not just, like academic understanding, but by contact with Srila Prabhupada's books, that's transcendental sound. It's Shabda Brahma, it's spirit. It's Krishna. Krishna's books are Krishna. So we're associating with Krishna. So not only are we in a kind of intellectual way getting information, but our hearts are being transformed so that we can really understand. That jnana becomes vijnana, becomes realized knowledge. So the potency is there in these different ways. And we just have to take advantage of it. Yes?
Prabhu, does Krishna exhibit the same pastimes in all his incarnations? Like 5,000 years ago when Krishna appeared, it was very obvious to tell the different rasas. He has Mother Yashoda, he had the gopis, he had the cowherd boys. But with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, did he also have like nights with the gopis, rasa dance?
No, not Lord Chaitanya. He did. He acts in different ways according to his form. And that fact, this is called Apasiddhanta, which we shouldn't have that understanding. Lord Chaitanya came as a devotee of Krishna. And so he's serving Krishna as a servant of Krishna. He's not acting. There are those who think that because he's Krishna, then we should be like gopis and Lord Chaitanya as Krishna in the mood of Krishna. But he's not in that mood. He's in the mood of the servant of Krishna. So he didn't exhibit that. And of course we know Lord Chaitanya didn't like to be called God. He would block his ears because he came to, I'm the servant of Krishna. Because his greed, the word is used, greed, lolium, he wanted to experience what it's like to experience him. That's what he wanted to experience. And of course, he also wanted to give, because this is a very fallen age, Lord Chaitanya had different aspects to his mission. So he wanted to give out love of God more freely than it's usually given out. And in fact, Krishna himself, Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself, he can give it. You might say he has more power to give it, especially in relationship to the original Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, rather than Lord Vishnu. He can give it himself. So he wanted to do that. So getting back to this idea of mission, Prabhupada would say that Lord Chaitanya felt anxiety that people are suffering and he wanted to give them Krishna Prema. So that's his mission. And our mission is to support Lord Chaitanya in that. So if you talk about Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, of course he interacted with his devotees in different ways, but especially his mission was spreading Krishna consciousness, which is also Prabhupada's mission. But there's not that kind of Krishna and the gopis leela going on with Lord Chaitanya.
What was the main rasa between Chaitanya and his devotees?
Servitude. Yes, Lord Chaitanya is in his servants. In fact, even though they're nitya siddhas, Lord Chaitanya, of course, whenever Krishna comes, he comes with an entourage. So they appeared with him, a group of his intimate devotees. But at least earlier in their life, before Lord Chaitanya kind of came out, you might say, they were sadhana bhaktas. They were, you might say, like us. And at one point, I've heard this. I've never seen Prabhupada write this, but I've seen devotees make this. They have this intuition that they started. Well, when Krishna comes, he comes with his entourage. So we're Lord Chaitanya's entourage. He's Krishna. I guess we must be. I guess we must be part of Krishna's entourage. Then it was revealed, of course, in different ways. This devotee is so and so in Krishna Lila, and this devotee is so and so. But they served Lord Chaitanya in servitude. He was the master. He was Mahaprabhu, and they served him in that way. Even his closest associates, they served him by talking about Radha Krishna and their pastimes, because he wanted to relish those, but as a servant, not. So they had different ways to serve him, but the mood of all of them were servants of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yes, Ruchira Prabhu.
I was just thinking, you were speaking about how Krishna even broke his own vow.
Mm-hmm.
And even he tells Arjuna, you declare it loudly that my devotees never perish. And it said that that's because he's renowned for breaking his promises for his devotees.
Right.
So much love there.
Yeah, Prabhupada made that point. That's why Krishna asked Arjuna. He said, if I promise, people will think, well, you break your promises. So I'll have Arjuna do it. Arjuna's more dharmic than I am. Yes, Vegavati Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thanks so much. I was thinking about, at one point, there were, I think some devotees asked Srila Prabhupada if our going out, say, into the airports and so many places, trying to bring people to Krishna consciousness was like the gopis sometimes trying to bring others into the circle of Krishna. And he said yes, and there's some painting where those things are both going on.
Yeah.
So trying to give Krishna to others, as you said, Prabhupada's mission, Lord Chaitanya's mission, you get a special taste that brings you closer to Krishna.
Actually, Prabhupada said that preaching was the highest service. The highest, to bring others to Krishna. And then again, related to this, that's the mood of the gopis. They love Krishna so much, they want to bring everyone into Krishna's association. So,
Last class, I think Mataji said that as we make more spiritual advancement, as we get more pure, we feel that we're more insignificant in front of Krishna. But in today's class, I heard that we want to control Krishna. So if we feel insignificant, really, really insignificant in front of Krishna, why would I like to control him?
It's the natural aspiration and longing of the soul to be with Krishna. Sometimes we also, sometimes we see both of these things in Prabhupada. Prabhupada used the term back to Godhead so often. And he would say, this is the goal of life. We want to go back to Godhead. But then also he would say, actually the devotee doesn't want to go back to Godhead. He doesn't care, really doesn't care. So, this is one of these paradoxes where both things can exist. There's a natural longing of the soul to want to be with Krishna. But at the same time, out of humility, the devotee thinks, well, I'm not qualified. We read the prayers of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Narottam Das, and so on, and you see this utter humility that they have. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and Chaitanya Charitamrita, they just feel, well, I can't have Krishna's association. I'm just so fallen and lowly and sinful. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he's so extreme. He says, I'm more sinful than Jagai and Madai. Anybody who utters my name loses all their pious credits. He says, I'm lower than a worm in stool. And Prabhupada would say they're actually feeling like this. That's the amazing thing about it. It's not that this is just some poetic metaphor. They're actually feeling themselves like this. So somehow, when we see that in some ways, it doesn't really calculate, we can't really relate to it. You might say, well, how can that be? How can somebody feel like that? Where's their self-esteem? But it's a whole, because we're talking about the spiritual world, there are certain parallels, but there are also things that are inconceivable. It's said, actually in Chaitanya Charitamrita, that you can't understand the mind of the pure devotee. Unless you're on that level, you can't understand. So some things, sometimes you scratch your head and you say, well, how can that be? But that's the inconceivability of the spiritual world. But of course, one thing we know is that it's all ecstasy. When Krishnadas Kaviraj is speaking like that, he's in transcendental ecstasy. Even the greatest suffering in the spiritual world is the greatest ecstasy. Here in the material world, any happiness, it's always tinged with something. It's never perfect, right? At least we know it's going to end at some point. You may think, oh, I wish this would never end. This is so, like kids, oh, I wish this would never end. But it's like, there's something wrong. It's going to end. And it's never perfect either. We say the sand in the sweet rice. That's the material world. But in the spiritual world, everything is ecstasy, even when it looks like it's suffering. So Krishna experiences all of these emotions, such an unlimited variety of emotions, and relishes them. Because he's God, he can do it. All right, we're a little late. Let's stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Haribo. But it's hard to follow on the Mirdanga, but I know you get it. Haribo Prabhu, nice to see you. Amam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Sri